Wales will have a largely clear but chilly evening, whereas further east it'll be cloudy, with cloud breaks limited. After a very grey day today, the Midlands and eastern England will continue cloudy and murky this evening. There will also be some mist and fog in places, perhaps becoming locally dense at times. Moving towards northern England, and we should see plenty of clear skies this evening, especially across Cumbria and Northumberland. This will lead to a chilly evening with perhaps some isolated fog patches forming. The coastal areas and the central belt of Scotland may see some cloud linger this evening, but elsewhere across Scotland will be dry and clear, leading to a cold start to the night. We move back into the cloud across Northern Ireland, with the cloud lowering at times to give some mist and fog in places, especially over the higher ground. Overnight, we will see little change across the country, with a clear but frosty night expected in the north.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage. I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Hello and welcome to Neil Oliver Live. On tonight's show, we'll speak to an expert on the Titanic as a new exhibition rolls into the capital. Our Great Britain is a man who used to be homeless, but now, thanks to lockdown, he's one of the country's most famous quiz masters and fundraisers. And no lesser personage than Father Christmas is here on the sofa, telling us how busy he'll be exactly 1 week from now. All that ahead after your latest news headlines.
Hello, I'm Karen Roberts. These are your latest headlines. A major incident has been declared in London over the rapid spread of Omicron. Mayor Sadiq Khan says he's concerned by the huge surge in COVID cases and the increase in hospitalisations. He's urging Londoners to book a vaccine appointment or to go to a walk-in centre as soon as possible. He says key public services will work together closely to minimise the impact on the city. Cabinet ministers have been briefed on the latest data regarding the Omicron COVID variant. It comes as new reports suggest a 2-week lockdown is being planned in England after Christmas to try to reduce the spread. 90,400 COVID cases were recorded in the UK over the last 24 hours. International hospitality consultant Peter Gorton told GB News that businesses need more clarity.
All we want to do is know where we stand within the industry, because we do need financial help, because I'm in the middle of it and I see already owners making decisions and sort of saying, can we afford to keep this person on? Can we afford to should we be closing our hotel? Do we close early? And that's very, very difficult.
Experts are warning restrictions similar in scale to the national lockdown are needed to keep hospital admissions from COVID below previous peaks. Documents released by the Scientific Advisory Group for Emergencies also warn that indoor mixing is the biggest risk factor for the spread of Omicron. The body says advice has been given to ministers. A number of police officers have suffered minor injuries in what they are calling scuffles at an anti-vaccine protest in London. The Met Police say the officers were injured while attempting to escort a police motorcyclist through Parliament Square. Video footage posted on social media shows shoving between police and protesters. No arrests have been made. A woman who was arrested after 4 children died in a house fire in South London has been released on bail. The 27-year-old was detained on suspicion of child neglect after the blaze at a property in Sutton on Thursday evening. Brothers Kyson and Bryson, aged 4, and Leighton and Logan, aged 3, died. Their father, Dalton Hoth, described them as bright, caring, lovable boys. The Netherlands will go into lockdown from tomorrow morning until at least the 14th of January to limit the spread of the Omicron variant. Dutch citizens have been flocking to the shops to stock up. Prime Minister Mark Rutte says the decision was unavoidable due to a 5th wave of coronavirus. It's hoped it'll help to prevent a surge in cases across the country and remove pressure on the strained healthcare system. You are right up to date. Now, back to Neil Oliver Live.
Christmas is all about tradition. Part of what makes it a reassuring time, a comforting and restorative time, is how so much is familiar every year. A lot of it is about the little things. The same decorations in the same place on the tree, on the mantelpiece, in the garden. The same family rituals performed at the same time year after year. The same favourite foods. The same old songs playing in the shops. So here it is, Merry Christmas and all that. Now it looks as though we've been gifted a new Christmas tradition, one we can all enjoy forevermore. And it's a great big dollop of fear and misery from the Grinches of our government and their soul-sucking scientists. If you listen carefully, you can hear the voices of the not-too-distant future. Can we start the circuit breaker lockdown tonight, Daddy? No, Tiny Tim. You know we can't just start our own circuit breaker. That wouldn't be right, or Christmassy, now would it? We all have to lock down at exactly the same time, otherwise the economy might recover, and we can't have that. The dear leaders went to a lot of trouble to crash the economy and do away with the pound. Imagine if we had to give up our universal basic income and go back to working for a living. But when then, Daddy? I want to lock the front door and hide the key until spring, like we always do. 'Twas the night before Christmas and all through the country, not a creature was stirring because of COVID. Well, you'll just have to wait until that twinkly little elf, Professor Whitty, sends his annual message down the chimney, wishing us all a happy new booster and warning us to stay away from Granny in case we kill her. But Granny died years ago, Daddy, from the pancreatic cancer no one knew she had until it was much too late to do anything about it. You remember, Daddy, the same year Grandad died alone in the care home of a broken heart because no one was allowed to visit him. Now, Tiny Tim, that's not the point. It's not about making sense. It's about making it up as you go along, like jolly old Professor Ferguson and his merry modelling. You know better than to talk about undiagnosed cancer, or indeed any other erstwhile dangerous ailments like heart attack and stroke. Now what do we sing? Silence now, silence now. All is closed, all is COVID. God bless you, Tiny Tim. Now let's sit by the fire with the rest of the family and do our lateral flow tests. God help us, every one, said Tiny Tim, although the words were quite muffled from behind his 3 masks. It's 2 Christmases in a row now, and far from being the ghost of Christmas past, it turns out 2020 might as well be our Christmas present. In my heart, I think I long suspected it would be. We were younger then and innocent by comparison, but still tears were shed. By then, we had already forgotten all about 3 weeks to flatten the curve. As the nights drew in 2020, we could still faintly remember gathering on our doorsteps to rattle our pots and pans, a bit like jingle bells, but tinny and flat. Remember, ho, 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 how we used to clap for carers. Soon it will be time to sack lots of those naughty little helpers for not taking their medicine. What did Santa bring you this year, nurse with 25 years of experience and half a lifetime spent looking after others? Why, by P45 and a look of disgust from my manager as she showed me the door. How Christmassy. Little did we know it then, naive souls that we were in Christmas past, but in just a few weeks, just into the new year of 2021, it would be all about 15 million jabs to freedom. Ah, how we laugh about that silly old notion. Now it's the end of the year, and the spirit of Christmas should be among us. But already it's clear the powers that be want us to concentrate on the traditions we learned just this time last year. Among my new favourites are the not-so-merry masks, sure to hide the smile on every child's little shining face. How exciting to see the return of the one-way systems in shops, almost like a conga line, but socially distanced, obviously. And what about Ireland going all out and opting for an 8 p.m. curfew? Talk about the luck of the Irish. Talk about silent night. One silent night after another, I think you'll find. And in among it all, instead of Slade and Merry Christmas everybody, or maybe a bit of Wham or Sir Cliff Richard, we get to listen to the usual suspects of Downing Street, worst boy band ever, but a guaranteed Christmas #1, droning on and on about how much danger we're all in, cases rising, save our NHS, how we must act now to whatever. Instead of ho, 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 it's just blah, blah, blah. Let's update the nativity scene while we're at it, so that the 3 wise men bring gifts of gold, frankincense and Omicron. Looking ahead now to the spirit of Christmas yet to come, and what do I see? Well, more of the same, and a few new twists. Noddy Holder's raucous opening line can soon be, "It's COVID." COVID is here to stay, of course, joining the rest of the viruses that have previously gifted us other Christmas traditions like the common cold and so on. But we don't mention harmless viruses at this time of year. That said, I'm telling you now that COVID is definitely for life, not just for Christmas. I've wondered how the boosters will be delivered in future. Maybe the National Health Service will work a bit like the Wine of the Month Club, dispatching a new one to the doorsteps every 4 weeks. Or perhaps every home will be sent an all-year-round advent calendar with a brand new booster behind every door. Frankly, the possibilities are limited only by our dear leaders and their collective imagination. So far, so sarcastic, but increasingly I can't help myself. I'm also, and let me be clear, as we say, undefeated by it all. Underneath it all, like the slumbering bulbs of snowdrops and crocuses waiting out the cold and ready to burst forth when the time is right, is the certainty that all of this must end, will end, and that it will end at precisely the moment enough of us simply say, it's over. A few weeks ago, I saw an excellent meme on social media. It had Scrooge, as played by Alistair Sim in the classic version of A Christmas Carol, leaning out of his window on Christmas morning and shouting to a passing child, "You boy, what variant is this?" I laughed at how perfectly it summed up the ridiculousness of the point at which we have arrived on account of Sage and Independent Sage and Professor Neil Ferguson and Chris Whitty and what's-his-name Van Tam and Boris Johnson and the rest of what I consider to be the worst, the absolute worst troupe of carol singers ever. But underneath the laughter, there is truth. A Christmas Carol is a story about redemption and a new beginning. It's about a man who has lost his way, who has forgotten about all that really matters on account of his headlong pursuit of money. Lucky for him, in spite of all his mistakes, all the hurt he has turned a blind eye to, a deaf ear, he has one last chance at a fresh start. The moment that seems to affect him as much as any is when the spirit of Christmas present reveals, hidden within the folds of his cloak, the desperate, wraith-like children that are ignorance and want. Like too many other wealthy men, he has overlooked ignorance and want. But as the Spirit tells him, they're always with us. What other broken figures might be standing alongside those two in the years ahead? Fear, desperation, anger, corruption, hopelessness. Too many to count. After all three spirits have come and gone, one after the other, Scrooge realises his folly and, all in an instant, changes his ways. Rather than looking back and dwelling any longer on past mistakes, he sets out with all possible vigour and optimism to make sure that however long he has left in this life, he will enjoy it to the full. Better yet, he will be made happy by giving every ounce of effort to making others happy. I say it's time our leaders and their advisors learned from their mistakes of the past, because their mistakes have been as numerous as snowflakes. The chains they bear are as heavy as those borne by Jacob Marley. Traditions last because they're good and do as good. I have no plans to make lockdowns, masks or any other forms of restrictions part of my Christmas yet to come, far less my Christmas present. Me and mine will stay faithful to the old traditions and will be happy. Before Christmas there is Advent. Advent means the arrival, the anticipated arrival of salvation. There is coming, and right soon, a day when all of this trouble is behind us and we will still be here. Now, all of that is my opinion, of course, and on this show, we love to hear what you think. You can email us on gbviews@gbnews.uk, and you can tweet us as well at GBNews. And I'll read out some of your comments a little later in the show if we have time. Now, to help me along for the next 2 hours, I have a wonderful panel. Tonight, Telegraph columnist, journalist and sketch writer Madeline Grant, and the education expert and podcaster Tom Buick. Welcome both. We're going to carry this discussion on after the break, when we'll be joined by the renowned American virologist and immunologist Dr. Malone. Now, while I've got you here, Maddie, what do you think as we approach the second Christmas in a row?
It feels like it's Groundhog Day, isn't it? A great Christmas film. We are living it, and it's awful, and it's really quite hard, I find, to get into the Christmas spirit, even though you want to return to the old traditions. I find that there is this kind of 24/7 pessimism that's kind of baked into us now in the way that we plan for the future. You don't plan ahead in the same way. I can't quite get excited about Christmas yet, even though it's a week away, because I know that there's a danger I might get Omicron and have to spend it isolating in my flat in London rather than with my family in Warwickshire. And there's also this feeling that at any given moment, despite all the advances that we're supposed to have made, that we are in some senses back at square one again. And we need to break this cycle. I actually think the public feels very differently to the way that they did last year. That is a big difference. I think people really have had enough. It's reflected in the polls and it's reflected in just the interactions that I have with my friends and family. So I think we are closer to that point, certainly, than we were last time.
Tom, just looking around, when you lift your head up, today in London there was an enormous protest again. I hear it called, an anti-vaccine protest, but I think it's really a pro-liberty anti-vaccine passport demonstration in truth. There's so much in the way of, a seeming sense of awakening from a long slumber. Do you feel fundamentally different going into this Christmas in terms of your understanding than you did this time last year?
Well, first thing, I just want to say it's an absolute privilege as ever to sit in the studio and listen to you deliver one of your monologues live. I mean, it just goes to show that the satirical monologue is very much underrated in our broadcast media. No doubt that will go viral, I'm sure, later. And I think it touched both Maddie and I as we were sitting on the sofa listening to that. But absolutely, I mean, what are the images I saw today of those protesters in Parliament Square? Of course, it was the statue of Millicent Fawcett holding her famous "Courage calls for courage everywhere." And for me, that is the point we've now reached in this pandemic. Now, let me be clear, I'm double vaccinated. I'll go and get my booster in January when I come up for that. I do also feel that, the government has had to take difficult decisions in lockdown 1 and lockdown 2. But what I find really disturbing about where we've got to now, in this sort of B-movie, the Omicron B-movie, the twist that the plot line has taken, is it feels to me that this is more about the public health officials manufacturing a crisis in order to meet secondary objectives of, for example, the rollout of the booster, rather than actually properly looking at, for example, the data that's coming out of South Africa, which, where you have clinicians, not lay people like the three of us, clinicians saying this is a mild disease. The hospitalisations and deaths are nothing like what we saw in the Alpha wave, the Beta wave, and of course the more virulent Delta wave, which came to us from India. So I'm just confused going into Christmas that we've got yet again a political class that is deploying Project Fear in order to achieve public health objectives rather than taking the people with them.
And it
Maddie, I was really struck looking at the protest, none of it was. I didn't see any of it particularly covered fully or what I thought was reasonably, on mainstream media. But it struck me that there was an open goal there for, cometh the hour, cometh the person. That someone could have an establishment figure could have taken the opportunity to be among that, and to have directed the wave, because there's surely a sense out there in the reasonable populace that enough is enough. And there was an opportunity there, rather than setting all of those people, those thousands of people aside as, anti-vaxxers, to embrace them for what they are, which is reasonable people who have had enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's a testament to the way that people have been smeared and had their reputations destroyed. I don't know too much about that protest, actually. I don't know, I didn't see it, I don't know who was on it. But it's incredible that now, for example, being against vaccine passports now makes you an anti-vaxxer. It's outrageous the way that language is being deployed, and people are at risk of having their reputations dragged through the mud because they've taken, a very liberal position and saying that we don't want to be a papers please type society. This is utterly reasonable. And yet people say, I've had people say to me when I've expressed that position, they say things like, why are you pro-virus? Why do you want COVID to win? As if the only way that we can possibly tackle this is with using the most illiberal possible lever at every single point. And I find that actually what we're seeing at Christmas time has sort of confirmed that to me. It seems as if the first lever they go to is the restrictions and the lockdown one. It's as if that the fact that they know that is an option, it shouldn't be an option, but the fact that it's there in the back of their mind, I think has left many of our public officials asleep at the wheel, and they have failed to do things like expanding NHS capacity and other things that they might have done sooner. Yeah. They haven't done that because at the back of their mind is a sense that if worse comes to worse, we can just press that lever. Yeah. But they need to understand that is an absolute, should be an unthinkable thing in a liberal society, should just go for that option.
Yeah. Of course, the government would say that it's been pursuing what it calls the precautionary principle. The problem with that is it's been interpreted in a very absolutist way. You're seeing that with the behaviour, for example, of the Prime Minister in New Zealand. In other words, this zero COVID strategy. So you've got Professor Chris Whitty, who is a very learned public health official. No one's doubting his credentials as the Chief Medical Officer. But I'm reminded of something, actually, that the Irish pamphleteer George Russell said in 1910. It's often credited, by the way, to Winston Churchill, that scientists should be on tap and not on top. But actually, in that same passage, what George Russell said about scientists is that outside of their area of specialisation, they know absolutely nothing about legislation and how to manage society. That's what we look to our politicians to do. In other words, what we need to do, in my view, is replace the precautionary principle with the proportionality principle, because that, only when we get into that debate do we touch on your monologue where you're talking about it's seemingly accepted collateral damage of cancer diagnosis going unchecked, or livelihoods, businesses, hospitality businesses being closed down. Surely that is completely unacceptable in a liberal democratic society.
I would have thought that, you talked about the precautionary principle, but I would have thought there must be grounds after 2 years for thinking that, and allowing for the possibility that the Omicron variant is what many learned people are calling it, which is the mild version of the virus that might be the doorway back, to the sunlit uplands. Why no attempt to embrace that? And furthermore, to the deliberate negation of natural immunity, and the possibility, or the reality that people who've had COVID and recovered are now good to go.
Yeah. I mean, I think a big problem actually is that looking at things through that precautionary lens, And I think the scientific advisors' approach might well be one where they consider the worst case scenarios first and foremost. To my knowledge, they haven't even been modelling some of these best case scenarios. They've just been, leaving that as a kind of negligible possibility, even though, as you say, there's a lot of compelling evidence that is indeed the case. But I think because they have different objectives, perhaps, than the politicians who are supposed to take a more holistic view of things. So they can afford to zone in on the worst-case scenarios because, it's in their interest to mitigate risk. But, of course, lawmakers have to take a more holistic view. Society has to take a more holistic view. And, really, I think there needs to be, this is our way of living with the virus, that whenever there is some threat on the horizon, we go into lockdown mode, restriction mode, then we need to have a national conversation about that, because if that is the way that we're going to live forever, it's damn well ought to be some kind of democratic agreement on that, and some honesty from politicians that this is what the new normal looks like, that we're never going back to normal again.
And I don't see how, for example, we can have a hospitality industry in this country if, as you say, lockdowns like this remain on the table in December, when that industry makes, I don't know, a quarter of its likely income for the year. How are we supposed to have a private sector that generates the income that pays for the NHS and the rest?
This whole lockdown release cycle, Neil, is absolutely catastrophic for our economy. Never mind the sort of carpet bombing that's going on now of our fundamental rights. And I think, again, what those protesters were saying in Parliament Square today is, these freedoms of association, of liberty and justice, these are Enlightenment principles that I thought, our ancestors already had that battle with the ruling elites. These are not the playthings of politicians.
No.
Power resides with the people. Those people in Westminster are our servants, that we gift powers to take proportionate action to keep our society safe. And for the vast majority of people who get this disease, it is very mild. That was the Chris Whitty at the start of this pandemic. If you remember, he was very, he went out of his way to point that out. Today, the government's rightly, trumpeting the fact that over 50% of the adult population has the booster. What are the big pharma companies saying about the third vaccination? 80% protection against the worst excesses of this virus, i.e. hospitalisation and deaths. So why are we going into 2022 with this kind of panic and hysteria and fear when that's not where we are in the cycle of the pandemic? It's not where we were 100 years ago in Spanish flu, for example, is it?
It's not. It's perfect stuff, Tom. Thank you for that. Now, this is going to be something that runs through the rest of the programme. I said it before and I'll say it again. When we come back, we're going to have the opportunity to talk to American virologist Robert Malone, who's the man behind the invention of the mRNA vaccines. So good I've said it twice. I can't wait to have his input. But all of that is after the break, and we'll see you shortly.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking rather cloudy again for many, although there will be some sunshine in the north and west. Let's now take a look at the details. Southwestern England will get off to a rather cloudy start with some mist in the east. However, parts of Cornwall, Devon and West Somerset will see some sunshine throughout the morning. Moving east towards southeast England and East Anglia, and it'll be a grey and murky start here with some mist and fog in places. East Wales and the Midlands will also be rather grey and murky, but out towards the west of Wales, it'll be a sunny but cold and frosty start to the day. There'll be some mist, fog and low cloud around the northwest during the morning, but towards Cumbria and the Pennines, it'll be a crisp start with plenty of sunshine. Northeastern England will also get off to a largely sunny start, but towards the coast, it'll be rather cloudy with perhaps some fog in places. This cloud may then move further inland during the day. Moving into Scotland, and there'll be some mist and low cloud around the central belt and eastern coast, but elsewhere should see some sunshine, but it'll be a cold and frosty start here. We move back into the cloud and murkiness across Northern Ireland, however. There'll be a few breaks in the cloud in places, especially towards the north of the country. Heading towards lunchtime and we'll see very little change. And if you stay under the cloud, it'll feel rather cold. And that is how the weather's shaping up during tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were discussing the state of play on COVID restrictions and vaccines. Dr. Robert Malone invented the mRNA technology that's now being used in the COVID-19 vaccines. However, he feels the vaccines could lead to the world's biggest public health blunder. And he joins me now. Robert, I'm so delighted to see you there and to know that we are in contact. How lovely to see you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to finally speak with you, and I've watched your broadcast and been fascinated by your courage and outspokenness and frankness to your audience. I think you've been an inspiration for all of us.
Oh, Robert, that's very kind of you to say that. Now, I've been aware of you for months. I don't know, maybe more than months now, and I've been paying very careful attention to what you've had to say. And I introduced you as the inventor of mRNA technology. Can you give the audience just a bit more of a sense of what is meant by that, exactly what your role was?
In the late 1980s, I was working at the Salk Institute in the laboratory of molecular virology under Dr. Inder Verma on a project focused on improving retrovirus and retroviral vectors for gene therapy to cure pediatric diseases. And my work was focused on how to understand how the virus assembles and how the RNA of the virus is put into the virus particle. To ask those questions, I need to develop a system that had never been done before, involving manufacture of large quantities of RNA, purification, and delivery into different cells. Pardon me. And in doing this, it took a heck of a lot of effort, and not a small amount of just good fortune and being at the right place at the right time. But it led to a amazingly efficient method for delivering RNA into cultured cells. And then, because I happened to be helping teach embryology, I started testing whether or not the same methods would work on first frog embryos, which you would call tadpoles, and chick embryos. And surprisingly, it worked there. I left the Salk and joined a company, and at the Salk, a patent was filed, patent disclosures. And then I joined a company right across the street called Vical, where we had further discoveries involving using mice with the RNA. And that led to a series of 9 patents that were filed between 1990 and 1991, all of which issued, and which covered this core discovery and technology in its use for vaccines.
Now, clearly that gives a real sense of the depth of your understanding and how far back you go into this system. When did you first voice concerns about the way in which your discovery was being used in the vaccines that are with us at the moment?
So you may recall Byram Bridle and the Canadian scientist was part of a team that had acquired the Pfizer non-clinical and clinical data packages that were submitted to the Japanese government to support this vaccine. So Byram acquired this data package that was otherwise not available to the general public. And I was one of the first people to be provided with it and asked to provide an opinion about what it meant. And I independently came to the same conclusions that Byram did, that these vaccines were rushed out, they hadn't followed normal procedures, and there were significant data issues demonstrating that they hadn't been developed properly and that there were certain risks, particularly potential reproductive risks, that hadn't been well characterized. And that led to an article that was published in Trial Site News. I'm these days an expert in clinical development and regulatory affairs. So I had others back me up that there was a number of irregularities. This was published in Trial Site specialty publication, and that led to a cascade of events. I subsequently also published an article on the bioethics of what was being done in Canada and across the world of forcing these vaccines on people, particularly children, and covering up the adverse event risks. I had also been having very active discussions with senior members of the FDA and sharing information with them about these risks and concerns. And all this led to a podcast. I didn't even know what podcasting was at the time, with Brett Weinstein and Steve Kirsch, his Dark Horse podcast, in which I just, carefully, casually, with an even voice, discussed the observations and concerns that I had. And it came out at a time in which there was a lot of confusion. A lot of people were uncomfortable with what was going on, but they didn't understand. They didn't have words to express it. They didn't have a framework to comprehend what they were observing. And the Dark Horse podcast, just viral, doesn't even describe it. It went around the world.
Robert, do you regard these vaccines that we have as safe for the way in which they're being used at the moment?
Very well worded, the way you put that. I do not regard them as safe, particularly in children. The risk-benefit ratio is completely upside down. more children will die from these vaccines than will be saved. The data are quite clear. I have long held two key positions. The vaccine should be reserved for those at highest risk of this disease. I have not said they shouldn't be used. I've said that they should be reserved. We should not have universal vaccination. We should absolutely not have vaccine mandates. That is, in my opinion, illegal and grossly immoral. Based on the Nuremberg Code, the Common Rule, the Helsinki Accord, everything else, we do not have adequate disclosure. And unfortunately, as the data have emerged increasingly, I'm increasingly forced into a position where I'm not sure if they even have a merit for those at highest risk, particularly given that we have therapeutic drug strategies that work, that keep people out of the hospital. And then, as if that wasn't enough, the data with Omicron is creating an even greater imbalance between risk and benefit. I think that it's likely in the next few weeks, I'm going to have to shift my position and say that I don't see how the risk-benefit ratio for these mRNA vaccines or adenovirus genetic vaccines make any sense for anybody anymore.
Robert, these are obviously. I'm obliged to say that you're giving your extremely expert, but your opinion, nonetheless, your opinion, and I'm sure there are others in the scientific community that would take a different stance. However, I'm very interested to hear you air your views given the context that you can give. When you voice the concerns that you have and that you have articulated so clearly for us within the scientific community, are there others who share your concerns, whether or not they're speaking publicly as you have been?
Absolutely, and it's a subset. I'm here with a group of physicians that include luminaries like Pierre Corey and Paul Merrick and many others. There's over 16, I'm the president, let me put it this way. I'm the president of the International Alliance of Physicians and Medical Scientists. We have over 16,000 members from all over the world, highly qualified physicians, people of the caliber of Pierre Corey and Paul Merrick and Peter McCullough and many, many others from across the world. And we've come up with 3 key explicit points that we all agree on. Consensus statement, it took us quite a while to arrive at it. That is, number 1, don't vaccinate children. Number 2, stop bothering the naturally immune. They have better immune responses than those that have received vaccine. Number 3, stop hunting physicians. Stop blocking physicians from administering life-saving treatments. That's it in a nutshell.
Robert, that's fascinating. That's fascinating input, and I'm so grateful to you, and so delighted that I've had the opportunity to hear you say on here what I've heard you say and what I've read of your articles in the past. Sadly, as always, I've run out of time for this, but thanks so much for being with us, and I'll very much look forward to maybe picking this conversation up with you again in the future. But 1,000 thanks for now, Dr. Robert Malone. Thank you. Listening to that, Maddie, what do you think, particularly in relation to the vaccination of children?
I agree that these decisions should be taken with informed consent. And with, for example, the vaccination of children, that's a decision for mum and dad. It may be that, for example, if they live with elderly relatives, it will make perfect sense to vaccinate the kids. They will decide the risk profile based on those circumstances. But, it's certainly not something that should be mandated on the population. I do worry a little that listening to what Robert says, it would give the impression that, vaccines aren't effective at all, that people might take from this that they shouldn't get vaccinated when they are overwhelmingly effective at preventing against hospitalisation and death. And in fact, the Omicron variant so far hasn't seen that level of virulence that many people have feared. But the person who died of it so far, I believe, was an unvaccinated elderly man. So it's very important that people still get vaccinated, I think.
But it is also interesting, isn't it, to hear that other side, because we know, don't we, that there are, there's, far from being a scientific consensus, there are and have always been scientists with another view of the way in which the vaccine rollout has been going on.
Well, that is the nature, is it not, of science? It's contentious. You know, scientists set out to falsify each other's theory. That's how, over centuries, we've progressed as a human race. And it's not as if this is just a one-off opinion of a very highly regarded clinician in relation to children. JCVI in this country, these are the advisors to government, advised that the harm-risk ratio didn't justify the vaccination of 12 to 15-year-olds here in England. Yet the Chief Medical Officer and the other advisors to the Prime Minister overruled in effect, and then it became a political decision. So parents look at that. I've got 3 young children. There's no way will I give my consent to them being vaccinated, not because I'm an anti-vaxxer, but because I'm not convinced of the scientific evidence as put to me by those scientists that the harm-risk ratio has been reached.
Exactly.
It's fascinating, and I am all about and all in favour of hearing all sides of the argument, especially when from time to time I feel as if one side of the argument is being seen to overshadow the others. I just want to hear all sides voiced, and I think someone of the calibre of Robert Malone is well worth paying attention to hear that other side. After the break, I'll be speaking to one of the experts of the Titanic exhibition, which has opened in London.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
There you are, welcome back. Now, there are many stories from history with which I can tell you I am quietly obsessed, but none more so than the epic tragedy of RMS Titanic. At the time of her ill-fated maiden voyage, she was the largest man-made object that had ever moved upon the face of the earth. Consider that. A few minutes before midnight on April the 14th, 1912, she struck an iceberg far out in the Atlantic. Within a couple of hours, in the early hours of the 15th of April, in fact, she sank to the bottom of the ocean. Of an estimated 2,224 passengers and crew aboard, some 1,500 were lost. Now, countless books have been written about the disaster, any number of films and documentaries shot. All manner of theories and conspiracy theories abound. Now, though, a new exhibition has opened in London, telling, so I'm told, the truth of it all, at last. Joining me now is author and maritime historian Claes Goran Vetterholm. Sorry if I've butchered the pronunciation there. But thank you for joining us. It's good to see you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you.
Titanic. you know, one of those words that means something or registers with everyone. How much remains untold about the life and death of RMS Titanic?
It depends where you come into the story. I'm currently writing a new book on the Titanic and the Swedish passengers, and I keep getting new information coming in all the time, which is quite interesting. There's always something new to learn. But as you say, countless books. It's been, I think, since 1985, at least one book every week published on the Titanic. And between 2011 and 2012, there was one book every second day published. One book every second day. 330 books.
Why do you think, and you would be as close to knowing this as anyone, why does Titanic exert such an unbreakable pull on the imaginations of so many?
Well, everybody must ask themselves, I mean, why do we sit here talk about the Titanic that happened almost 110 years ago? I think it has very much to do with identification, that you can identify with these people. Possibly not the richest, but the ordinary passengers. It could have been you or me, and how we react throughout these 2 hours and 40 minutes that it took for the ship to sink. From the beginning, nothing peculiar. Some people didn't even feel that there had been a collision, and then in the end, just horror. So it speaks to us in this way, really. If we compare with the Holocaust, where millions and millions of people were murdered, it's difficult to identify. But here we can really identify with the ordinary people. And I think that is something. And I've met countless of children who are extremely fascinated. I was 8 years old myself when I began being interested in the story. So I know when they come to the exhibition, I know what it is about, how I myself became interested.
I'm one of those who's been quietly obsessed with it for a long time. I used to collect newspaper front pages, and I have within the collection. I think it's the Daily Mirror's front page about the loss of Titanic, and I remember being struck at the time that the initial reports that came out were that she was steaming on safely towards her destination, because I'm right in thinking that those ships of that size, it was genuinely believed that they were simply unsinkable, wasn't it?
But there's a big difference between being unsinkable and cannot sink. So it's a vast difference. And in those days, this word unsinkable was used for practically all ships in the world. But they said that the Titanic was practically unsinkable. And my rowing boat at our summer house was also practically unsinkable. And I had a horrible experience of that once. It depends where you set this bar, actually. Titanic was unsinkable up to a certain level. And from then on, she was not unsinkable at all. And of course, the designer knew this. And the people who were involved in the architecture, they knew it. For the traveling public, it didn't mean so much. It was a big, safe ship, and nothing could happen. Something that we've heard today as well. We think that something is safe when it's large enough.
Bear with me while I bring in my guests on the couch. Tom, I'm presuming the mention of the word Titanic, it just puts a shiver down the spine, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, yeah, like you, I'm totally obsessed and fascinated with it as well, and not just because the Titanic film with Winslet and DiCaprio is a rather good sort of rom-com, as well as a great historic story as well. But I think, as your guest is saying there, it's also a metaphor, isn't it, for so much of what was going on in society at that time, the social class system, the kind of, it's the first industrial revolution, the telegraph, the fact that passengers were paying, weren't they, for the, the radiographers to send their sort of banal messages back to New York. And of course that became front and centre as Titanic sent its last messages in desperate hope of being rescued. And there's just so many conspiracy theories as well, isn't there, abound about the Titanic?
There's an indescribable horror, though, isn't there, Maddie, about the idea of their predicament. You know, at night, in the near-freezing Atlantic, 2 miles of water beneath the hull, and they were going down. It's got it all, hasn't it?
It really does. It's got also a sense of there's absolutely nothing that you can do at that point. You're contending with forces far beyond your control. And actually, part of the reason that I think we empathise with the Titanic is also that you imagine where you might have been on that ship. I think, if I was with my middle-class family, we'd have been in second class, and then probably me and my mum would have survived, my brother and my dad would have drowned on board the ship. You can conceptualise it in that way.
Yes.
But I was utterly obsessed with the Titanic as well. I used to collect, I used to write down information about the passengers and this sort of thing, like try to create records of it. It's totally all-absorbing, particularly for children for some reason.
I can only imagine that you're not surprised to hear the testimony from the couch there that both guests similarly are compelled by the story.
A little comment on the film. I guess you mean James Cameron's Titanic film. And I think it is the best Titanic film ever made about what never happened.
Now, come on, you can't leave that hanging there. What do you mean? What about the events? What about the mechanical events of the sinking? Were they portrayed properly?
Well, I have actually met James Cameron and discussed the film with him. So we had different opinions about very much, so to speak. But technically, it's a fantastic film. But he has used people that did exist and told a story about them, and in certain points it's definitely not true. And it caused in Britain at the time a big controversy, where British papers wrote that it was a racist film, and in a way it is, because it describes all the British individuals as crooks and the Americans as good people. You can have a lot of opinions about this. The film is one of the best-selling films in the world, as you know, and it still makes money. I think it's about £2 billion today. So it's still... Sorry, yeah.
Finally, what can visitors to the new exhibit look forward to seeing? What new light will be cast on that, seemingly familiar story?
Well, my idea about this exhibition, together with Luis Ferreira, who's the director of the company, is that we tell the human story. So I have picked out certain people, a person, a story, and an artifact. We can't tell about everybody on board. It's impossible. But I tell a few bits and pieces. A girl from Switzerland, a gold digger from Finland, immigrants from Sweden, a mass steward from England, and so on. So we have mixed people, and then we tell their stories. And you can also tell stories even if they died. So here is the man who writes a postcard to his father on the west coast of Sweden. The postcard is too big. So when the postcard arrives in the afternoon of the 15th of April, 1912, the father must pay extra stamps in order to get the card. And he reads the card. And it's a nice card, and the son tells about how nice the ship is and so on. The father doesn't know that his son is dead. And a few hours later, he reads this card with completely different eyes. And I think this is a way of identification of realizing, yes, it could have been you or me. This horror and this tragedy, a friend of mine who was there yesterday pointed out that we talk much more about the tragedy, which it is, than the romance of the ship. Of course, there is romance as well. But we must remember that this is a story of real people who were there. And I think that is putting it into its right context.
So amazing and illuminating to hear you. Thank you so much for being with us this evening. Such a familiar story in many respects, but clearly there's much for us all to learn still about RMS Titanic, a story like no other. After the break, I'll be speaking to a charity involved in the planting of trees to remember loved ones in Northumberland.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking rather cloudy for many, although there will be some clear spells around. Let's take a look at the details. Zooming into the southwest, and although it will be dry, there'll be plenty of cold around, although parts of Devon and Cornwall will see some clearer skies at times. Southeast England and East Anglia will also see rather cloudy skies, with the cloud lowering to give some mist and fog in places. Western Wales will have a largely clear but chilly evening, whereas further east it'll be cloudy with cloud breaks limited. After a very grey day today, the Midlands and Eastern England will continue cloudy and murky this evening. There will also be some mist and fog in places, perhaps becoming locally dense at times. Moving towards northern England, and we should see plenty of clear skies this evening, especially across Cumbria and Northumberland. This will lead to a chilly evening with perhaps some isolated fog patches forming. The coastal areas and the central belt of Scotland may see some cloud linger this evening, but elsewhere across Scotland will be dry and clear, leading to a cold start to the night. We move back into the cloud across Northern Ireland, with the cloud lowering at times to give some mist and fog in places, especially over the higher ground. Overnight, we will see little change across the country, with a clear but frosty night expected in the north.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back once more. Now, there's plenty to come on Neil Oliver Live, but it's 8 o'clock, so we must get the latest news headlines.
Hello, I'm Karen Roberts. These are your latest headlines. News just in, Britain's Brexit Minister David Frost has reportedly resigned over the political direction of Prime Minister Boris Johnson's government. The Mail on Sunday claims that Lord Frost handed in his resignation a week ago, but has been persuaded to stay until January. A major incident has been declared in London over the rapid spread of Omicron. Mayor Sadiq Khan says he's concerned by the huge surge in COVID cases and the increase in hospitalisations. He's urging Londoners to book a vaccine appointment or go to a walk-in centre as soon as possible. He says key public services will work together closely to minimise the impact on the city. Cabinet ministers have been briefed on the latest data regarding the Omicron COVID variant. It comes as new reports suggest a 2-week lockdown is being planned in England after Christmas to try to reduce the spread. 90,400 COVID cases were recorded in the UK over the last 24 hours. International hospitality consultant Peter Gorton told GB News that businesses need more clarity.
All we want to do is know where we stand within the industry, because we do need financial help, because I'm in the middle of it and I see already owners making decisions and sort of saying, can we afford to keep this person on? Can we afford to, should we be closing our hotel? Do we close early? And that's very, very difficult.
Experts are warning restrictions similar in scale to the national lockdown are needed to keep hospital admissions from COVID below previous peaks. Documents released by the Scientific Advisory Group for Emergencies also warn that indoor mixing is the biggest risk factor for the spread of Omicron. The body says advice has been given to ministers. A number of police officers have suffered minor injuries in what they're calling scuffles at a protest against vaccine passports in London today. The Met Police say the officers were injured while attempting to escort a police motorcyclist through Parliament Square. Video footage posted on social media shows shoving between police and protesters. No arrests have been made. A woman who was arrested after 4 children died in a house fire in South London has been released on bail. The 27-year-old was detained on suspicion of child neglect after the blaze at a property in Sutton on Thursday evening. Brothers Kyson and Bryson, aged 4, and Leighton and Logan, aged 3, died. Their father, Dalton Hoth, described them as bright, caring, lovable boys. The Netherlands will go into lockdown from tomorrow morning until at least the 14th of January to limit the spread of the Omicron variant. Dutch citizens have been flocking to the shops to stock up. Prime Minister Mark Rutte says the decision was unavoidable due to a 5th wave of coronavirus. It's hoped it will help to prevent a surge in cases across the country and remove pressure on the strained healthcare system. You're right up to date now. Back to Neil Oliver Live.
Hello again. Christmas is obviously about family, but it's therefore a difficult time of year for those who have lost loved ones, either recently or in years past. To try to bring some closure, a charity in the northeast of England called Bright Red has been running a tree planting project at a special landmark called Northumberlandia. For those of you unfamiliar with it, it's a series of hills that make up the Lady of the North. Our reporter, Rachel Sweeney, has been there with a family who lost their son 2 years ago.
Julie and Graham Sanderson planted a tree in memory of their son, who died 2 years ago. Ross had an immune deficiency. His condition deteriorated and he needed a bone marrow transplant. Because of rare complications, Ross passed away, aged 30.
I know we all think our children are amazing, but he was a very, very special young man, and I have to say that so many people have said that, you know, not just family, friends and friends of friends and everything. He was full of life. He was a very kind, thoughtful young man. He was a very brave young man in the decisions that he had to make. But yeah, he was a special, special person. He really was.
And the family now has a special place to reflect on the time they spent together.
I suppose it's a bit like putting some roots in the ground to keep his memory going, really, you know. We've done it ourselves personally at home. We planted a tree at home in his memory. But this is lovely to do this. I think there's just a little spot there where another little spot where he's remembered. And I know we will definitely both come back and visit it regularly.
As part of the Bright Red Woodland Memorial, 1,000 trees have been planted on this site, 350 of them in memory of a loved one. The trees are hawthorn and rowan, and they'll live for hundreds of years. The initiative is run by Bright Red, which is a regional blood cancer charity. It funds research, patient care and education. Members of the team have planted trees in memory of their own loved ones.
It's very touching, and I've been through this situation myself. I planted a tree for both my mum and dad last year because I lost both my parents, and it's just really nice to see people coming along, and it just gives them something else to focus on. And this site itself is beautiful. And you can come and walk here at any time. So they'll be able to come and visit the tree and see the Woodland Memorial develop over the years.
Hundreds of years, in fact. Memories that will grow in Northumberlandia while families' hearts heal.
That's such a moving idea. Now, with me to talk about it all, and she was there in that short film, Lisa Saxton, fundraising manager from Bright Red. Hello, Lisa.
Hi Neil.
Thanks for being with me. For various reasons, I'm haunted by a line from a Julian Barnes novel, Objects Contain Absent People, which registers with me all the time. And in this context, obviously, I think about how meaningful it is for people mourning to be able to come to a living tree and there to think about their loved one. Who came up with this idea?
It was actually my idea. It's something that I've thought about for a while. I like to be outdoors, and then with COVID, we had to, as a charity, like many charities, had to cancel all of our events. And with that, the idea that it came about that we could actually plant some trees, and I thought it would be so fitting, especially with everything that had been going on with COVID and the charity, to be able to have an area where people could plant a tree and have somewhere to come on a regular basis. Because watching that tree grow, it just gives somewhere to visit, somewhere where, through COVID, some people haven't even been able to say goodbye to their loved ones when they've passed away, or being able to visit on a regular basis. So this gives some area that they can find a little bit of peace and come and reflect in the area.
There's something so very appropriate, though, about going to something that's living. That in the aftermath of loss, to be able to go and be among trees, and with one of those trees being in memory of your own loved one. There's something about renewal and rebirth and continuity about it.
Yeah, most definitely, and it's such a nice site as well. The Northumberlandia, the Lady of the North, the actual area is accessible all year round at any time. So for being able to plant a tree and watch that for generations, it's not just the immediate family, the generations, the grandchildren and so on can then still go back time and time again to see that tree grow.
It's a lovely image that you've described there. It's a lovely place that you've put down roots for, and I can only thank you for coming on and sharing the story with us. And I hope that yourself and all who have lost a loved one and who make a pilgrimage to that place, get the comfort that they deserve. So thank you for coming and sharing what is ultimately an uplifting story. Now, here's a question. Who went from sleeping rough on a bench in London to raising £1 million for charity and then being presented with an MBE in Windsor Castle by Prince William? The one and only answer is J. Flynn, who, after spending some time homeless, was helped by a charity, met and married and had a son, and then embarked upon a career as a quizmaster like no other. Jay is another character putting the great into Great Britain, triumphing over adversity and making the world a better place. And he joins me now to tell a story that must surely sometime soon be the plot of a movie. Jay, thanks for... I must shake your hand. Such a good story.
I think it does.
Take us back to the beginning.
It does need a movie script, doesn't it? Sometimes it just genuinely does seem unbelievable. And I still think that I'm going to wake up on the Saturday that I created the original Facebook post, and none of this would have happened, and it would have just been I've slept for the last 21 months.
But take us back a bit. Rewind a little bit. How did you come to be homeless and sleeping from time to time on a bench?
So in the sort of late 2000s, I was going through a relationship breakup where I'd come away from London and I was living in the northeast, and it hit me hard. We'd been together, we were engaged to be married. Everything seemed perfect. And it crumbled, and with that went my mental health. I fell into depression. But in the 2000s, we weren't really able to talk about depression or mental health problems. It was still very taboo for anyone to talk about it. So I never sought any help. All the people around me I didn't trust. So I decided that it was best for me that's the short version, is to take myself out onto the streets of London. And I was out there for 18 months until a homeless charity found me.
How did they... It's another perfect little detail, really, the way in which they made contact with you.
Yeah, for me, I just kept myself to myself. I slept on the embankment, which I called number 3 Riverside View, because it was in the unique way that we always number our houses. It was the second bench along, so that was number 1. This is number 3. But I wanted to do that to give myself a home. So that was what I would call home. And I was there for 18 months. And eventually they found me, but they only found me because they didn't think anyone would be stupid enough to sleep in the most exposed sort of place, in Westminster and in London. So they left a card. They didn't disturb me sleeping, just left some details. We're up the road. We might be able to help you. And it took me 3 days to walk through the door because I still didn't trust and still had nothing in me. But I promised myself I'll walk in that door and I'll see what they've got to say. And they kept every single promise that they made me. And that's what restored my faith in not just people, but also myself as well, that I could trust again.
So what were the next steps? You made contact with the charity in London,
yeah,
I presume, and then that opened another chapter in your life, did it not?
Well, I was the pure definition of a homeless person. I was a person without a home. If I'd have been a drug addict or an alcoholic or had any other kind of issues, I would have been helped and resettled very quickly. But there is so much red tape and legalities and things you have to prove to go through, well, actually, let's try and work with you. So it took another 6 months. But they worked really hard. They got me into temporary accommodation. They then carried on working with me, got me into a house share. And then through that, I started to rebuild my life. And fast forward, I moved to the Northwest, got myself a very good job, some of the best friends you could possibly want.
Wow. Married,
have a 4-year-old, and then, in what is the best mistake of my life, created a Facebook post last year.
So put that into context for us. It was because of lockdown, wasn't it? And you were, like many people, you were thinking about, but there's the pub.
Yeah, so I mean, with my business partner, a friend of mine, we had a pub that we were running in Darwin, where we're from, in Lancashire, and we gave the pub up 3 weeks, handed the keys back 3 weeks before the first lockdown, which in hindsight is the best thing that I could ever have done, because we would have been in a horrendous situation. And my heart goes out because I still know a lot of people who work in pubs.
So it was difficult. You were in a difficult patch with the pub anyway.
Yeah, the pub was a financial money pit. And as much as we were working so hard to do things, we just knew that if we didn't, in the January we made the decision. We said, if we don't come out of it now, we're going to be in financial ruin. And I said, I'm not prepared to allow any of us to end up in a situation where I could end up back, where I came from. So we gave up the pub, but Thursday was my night out of the week, and it was the best night in the pub as well, quiz night. So...
That's the magic word, isn't it? Quiz night.
Yeah. So I went back, joined my quiz team, and then after 2 weeks, Boris Johnson makes his speech on the Friday saying, I'm shutting all hospitality. My instant response was, well, what do I do now? Because I can't go out my one night of the week where I can go out, have a laugh, have a bit of fun. So at work on the Saturday, me being me, went, wonder if I could do something online, you know, get some of the local quiz teams around here in Darwin. Created a Facebook post, set it off on its way, you know, for my friends, and forgot all about it. And then on the Monday morning, I get a message from a random person saying, can you tell me more about your quiz on Thursday night? Okay, looked at it. 700 people interested in the event on the Monday. I was like, okay, that's a bit bigger than I was expecting, but we'll run with it.
Good turnout for the average pub, that, isn't it?
Well, this is, I was like...
Probably what you do on a quiet night.
But I was like, they probably won't turn up. It's Facebook. Everyone just... I don't even know how this has got out into the public domain. My boss at the time said, oh, it'll be 1,000 by the time we finish work or by the time you get home. It wasn't. It was 10,000 that Monday night. Then Boris makes the, you know, the now historic speech, I'm locking down the country, don't go out. By the time that finished, it was 20,000. Following morning, it was 70,000, and it just kept going up and up. By the time I presented that first quiz on Thursday, 26th of March, there was over 500,000 people interested in the event. And the unofficial figure, because I didn't know what I was doing and we didn't record any data, but from friends who were watching along, the unofficial figure was 300,000 people were watching between YouTube and Facebook. This idiot just sat there going, OK, then, don't know what I'm doing here, but question number one, what is this? You know, and it was just incredible, but I still thought it would be a one-off. I still thought that was it. I'll do this one, then we'll find something else to do. Oh, there it is. Yeah, that's me. That's the first one.
Talk about being thrown at the deep end.
So when you were asking that first question, you knew that you were going out to, well, it's anybody's guess, but maybe 300,000, 500,000 people.
Yeah, when I you can see the numbers there. When I turned on, behind the scenes on YouTube, you can see how many people are waiting. And there was 5,000 people, and I just went,
look at it.
I'm in trouble here. What have I done? That was my word. That was my sentence of the week. What have I done? What have I done? What have I done?
Was there a winner?
Well, this is it. Friends of mine were saying, well, how do we win your quiz? Because normally we do quite well. And I went, oh, yeah, I can't sit there and go, and 177,430th place is, you know, he said it. So I just straight away, I just said, right, what we need to do is people can get together in their own individual groups and pick a winner from those. They don't need to worry about, you know, winning overall, but share that pride. There's even a hashtag running now that's the hashtag 50 Club. So people who get 50 out of 50 on a Thursday or a Saturday night, because we're still going strong now, they'll now use that if they get 50 out of 50. It's an incredible community that I've ended up creating.
Now, you said you thought it would only happen once, but it hasn't only happened once, and it continues to happen.
Yeah.
And how did it metamorphose into this incredible fundraising effort?
Yeah, so I finished the first quiz and I just said, look, I've got nothing better to do. If you want me to carry on and do this for the next, few weeks or however, here's a proper social media presence now. So come and join us. Let me know what you're thinking. And loads of people did, and the audience then continued at 180,000 for the next sort of few weeks. And a lot of messages I got between those two quizzes was, you've created the most incredible community and incredible platform. You could do so much good with this. And I sat there and thought, yeah, but I don't really know how to do that. So I don't want to start charging people or saying, to play the quiz tonight, to get the link, you have to donate money to charity. That's not what it was about. It was always about keeping the quizzes free. So I just thought, right, well, why not? I have a break in between rounds 3 and 4. I thought, why don't I just put a Just Giving link and a little video or something up? And I did that for quiz number 2 for NHS Charities Together, and in that one night we raised £90,000.
That is literally phenomenal.
So, and that's all I did. I said, right, okay, well, that's incredible. Most I think I've ever raised is £250 up to that point.
And is the £1 million figure that I quoted at the top, is that there or thereabouts?
I think we're about 1.2 million now. Wow. NHS Charities Together, we raised £300,000 for Alzheimer's Research UK. Connection at St Martin's, which is the homeless charity that helped me. We've raised money for them in honour of Diana Award, the Princess Diana Award, but even down to air ambulances across the UK, guide dogs.
That is a serious fundraising initiative you've got going. And then finally, the MBE.
Yeah, it does.
Which I'm imagining in the last 10 minutes of the film. when it's made?
Oh, it's just it was an incredible day. I mean, I found out September last year, and I'm rubbish at keeping secrets. And I was 10 minutes away from going live, and in pre-COVID times, they would send you a lovely letter out in the post, but this came through via email, pops up in my bottom corner as I'm about to go live. And I was like, Cabinet Office, I really need to read that before I do anything else. Beautiful citation on there. I thought, oh, okay, right. So I then went live. So I'm now hiding this secret that I just want to go running around and telling everyone, well, I've been made an MBE. What on earth? But that's it. I was just like, people like me don't get made an MBE. I'm just a normal person who just lollies about.
But Jay, it's people like you that should be made an MBE and given these gongs, and not civil servants that are just doing their job and get given all these gongs. I mean, what an inspiration!
I know.
Neil. I mean, yeah, we're talking about a charity I'm involved in next, and I just think what you've done to raise that amount of money is absolutely extraordinary. But just coming back to the homelessness experience, because you mentioned there about this thing about statutory homeless, and you didn't fit that particular sort of tick the box.
Yeah.
If there's, I mean, now you've got the MBE and you've got this platform, you've got these wonderful. What's the one thing you'd sort of change about homelessness policy then in this country that would help more Jays and people?
The thing I really want to do is I really want to go out on the streets and put out a documentary that, because it's not just about the statutory stuff, it's also about people's perception.
Indeed.
And what I want to do is I want to change people's perception that every single homeless person out there has a different story.
Yeah.
Yes, there are going to be some who are not, not the right kind of people, but there are going to be people like me who just wanted help. And from then on, it needs to be a way of recognising straight away who, okay, so you're a homeless person. Because one of the things I had to go through for a while was I was in Westminster, but I'm not from Westminster. That's not where I was born. But this is where I've been living for 18 months. But they didn't know that because they hadn't seen me there for 18 months. So they then had to see me for, I think it was a further 3 months, that I now become a Westminster resident, to then move on from there. And that's the, you're here, you're our problem, let's deal with it. That's what it should be.
Neil, the film should be called Three Riverside View.
Yes, and it should end, the MBE scene should be the last scene of the film, a bit like the end of Star Wars when it ends with them getting a medal from Princess Leia.
That's We're building this quite well, we'll pitch this later.
Brilliant. Jay, absolutely brilliant.
I knew quizzes were the best people in the world.
We talk on here about Great Britons, and you absolutely, you're another contender, one of those who puts the great into Britain, turning a situation of adversity into something that was positive, not just for you and your wife and your child, but for goodness knows countless
for the country,
countless people. So I'll shake your hand once again.
Amazing.
Thank you very
Brilliant.
much. Thank you
for that.
Perfect.
Yes.
It's all right.
It was very must.
Well, I hope that story, Jay's story, has left you feeling warm inside and uplifted. And well, if so, this next story, which is a bit of a change of topic, is all about a festive favourite, being the roasted bird. We've all heard of and had, I imagine, pork crackling, but did you know it's now possible to get crackling from a chicken? Now that's clever. To tell us how it's made, and I'm sure how well it's selling at this time of year, we're joined by Managing Director of the original chicken crackling, Rod Garnham. Part of me can't believe I'm having this conversation with you. Rod, tell me how did it come to pass? How is chicken crackling made, and how have you gone about making something out of it?
It's an interesting story. My business partner Robert, he farmer's son, went into advertising, came back out of the city looking for a career change. He loved his Sunday dinners that his mother would cook the family. His favourite piece of the chicken was always the thigh and the crispy skin around the thigh. And with this career change in mind, he sat down and thought, what can we do to make a new, inventive, brand new to the market snacking product? And he wanted to make a chicken crackling. We got introduced by a mutual friend. I'd just left a business that I'd had for several years in snacking myself. And we had several conversations about how do we bring this to market, how do we develop it, and that's how it all started, really. We ended up going from conversations, planning it out in the farmhouse, to building our own factory, inventing unique pieces of equipment, sourcing the raw materials, bringing on board Michelin star chefs to help us refine the recipes and make sure the ingredients were all fully British and perfect. And we came up with what we believe is the winning snack for 2022.
Wonderful, Great British crispy chicken. Now, I know you sent, or I'm told you sent me some addressed to here at GB News HQ, but it didn't arrive on time.
No,
when it comes, someone else is going to eat it. But do you have a sample that you can show us? Give us a sense.
I'll show you that the problem we have at the original Chicken Crackling Company is that our snack products, as soon as the postman see it, or anyone in the post change or the desk that receives the products, it really struggles to make it to the end destination. So we really have to mask it at times and hide what sort of product it is. If it goes in an original Chicken Crackling box, it rarely makes it to the end user because everyone eats it on the way. So it's probably suffered that consequence today.
Wow, that is quite a thought. Now, I'm assuming you're confident that like pork crackling, this is going to be the next big thing, next big festive favourite.
Well, we certainly hope so. We're a very young entrepreneurial company. We make everything in-house, everything's sourced from the UK. It's a very British brand, British produce, all red tractor. It's really farm-inspired. And the product itself brings a little bit of a new twist to the pork crackling. It's keto-driven. Obviously high in protein, and being a chicken skin, it ticks a few more boxes than people that maybe can't eat pork. And we've got some fantastic flavours that naturally contribute to the chicken skin, like the Sunday roast flavour, just like Robert's mum used to make at home in the farmhouse. Yeah, absolutely fantastic flavour. So it's really flying off the shelf, that one.
Brilliant. Okay, Rod, that is amazing. I'm delighted for you. I think that's an excellent idea. And many thanks for bringing chicken crackling to our attention. I'm sure we'll all be looking forward to that. After the break, a charity close to Tom's heart that helps, and oh, they so deserve it, it helps to look after those in care.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking rather cloudy again for many, although there will be some sunshine in the north and west. Let's now take a look at the details. Southwestern England will get off to a rather cloudy start, moving east towards southeast England and East Anglia, and it'll be a grey and murky start here with some mist and fog in places. East Wales and the Midlands will also be rather grey and murky, but out towards the west of Wales it'll be a sunny but cold and frosty start to the day. There'll be some mist, fog and low cloud around the northwest during the morning, but towards Cumbria and the Pennines it'll be a crisp start with plenty of sunshine. Northeastern England will also get off to a largely sunny start, moving into Scotland, and there'll be some mist and low cloud around the central belt and eastern coast, but elsewhere should see some sunshine. But it'll be a cold and frosty start here. We move back into the cloud and murkiness across Northern Ireland. However, there will be a few breaks in the cloud in places, especially towards the north of the country. Heading towards lunchtime, and we'll see very little change, and if you stay under the cloud, it will feel rather cold. And that is how the weather's shaping up during tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for the Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is the Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
Welcome back. This next story is all about a charitable trust working to minimise the barriers facing those who've been in foster care. Beyond Trust works to find one-off grants that can be given to care leavers in order to provide the tools and resources they wouldn't have access to otherwise. Without a bank of mum and dad, they are a support network which helps young people reach their full potential. I'm joined by Gemma Creamer. Hello, Gemma.
Hi, Neil.
Who's a volunteer with the charity. As a previous child in care, she knows how far even the smallest bit of support can go and the difference it makes. Gemma says she remembers only ever wanting someone to believe in her. Tom, who we know as a panellist on this channel and on my show, is also the charity's chief exec.
Or the chair. It's an unpaid role. I'm volunteered.
Quite so. Now,
yeah.
Tom, take it over from here. You know about this, and you know Gemma, and you know this charity. So
yeah, I mean, look, this is a trust that's very close to both our hearts. I left foster care in the 1980s. I left school actually with no qualifications, which is odd because actually the day job I have as a chief exec is I represent the exam boards whose qualifications I once failed. But anyway, that's a whole other story. Gemma's 19 years old. She's she'll tell you her story, but she's training to be a barrister. But importantly, she's helping our charity in Sussex really be the colloquial bank of mum and dad for care leavers that, you know, I don't begrudge them this, that affluent kids perhaps are more used to. So, I mean, Gemma will take it away in terms of the kind of grants that we raise money for and fund, but it's just those really modest things that can make all the difference from, frankly, being like Jay, a life on a park bench somewhere, or actually having a caring, loving home and a job to go to.
I think it was really important with the story that Jay shared as well, because we see that a large percentage, I think, Tom, you could probably give the exact
60% of street homeless have been in care.
Previously in care, and it all is about, you know, fixing those mistakes that are made in the past, because that's what helps rectify it going forward. So if we can try fix those situations as early on as possible. You know, the thing about Beyond is what it's doing, it is trying to fill the gaps and bridge the barriers between young people who have been in care and them achieving their dreams. Like, you know, Tom has already said, we don't have the advantages that some, you know, individuals have from more affluent backgrounds. We don't have the mum and dad to constantly rely upon. And that is where Beyond is stepping in to fill that gap.
Tell us your own personal story, just to give a sense. You know, what age were you when the state intervened?
So my mum sadly passed away when I was 9, and then simply just due to a breakdown in relationship with my father, I went into foster care at the age of 14. I was in one placement to start with, that was only meant to be temporary, but unfortunately that broke down and I ended up moving into another placement, which became my forever home. I had, which we both know, Tom, it's not always the case where someone ends up in a placement and it's a good experience, but I was very lucky to end up in a fantastic home with 2 absolutely incredible carers that have, you know, got me arguably to where I am today, and I wouldn't be here without them. So
that's lovely to hear. And Tom, you have a similar story to tell.
Yeah, I mean, I came into care at the age of 7. My mother had terrible heart problems. She did eventually pass away, but I grew up with my father for a while. He was a single parent, a bit too fond of the 3 o'clock at Kemp Town and gambling on the horses, which meant there wasn't a great deal of money in the home. And I think, you know, after sort of 3 days eating sugar sandwiches at one point, it was only a matter of time before I was put on an at-risk sort of register. But like Gemma's story, you know, I was also fortunate after having quite a bit of moving around of foster homes. So between at the age of 7 and 12, I had something like 25 different foster care placements. I can't you can remember them all in sequence.
Is that a common story?
It's very common. I mean, even in the care system today, and we shouldn't forget, you know, we've got record numbers of people who are in care, nearly 100,000 very vulnerable people, all with their own individual stories, are in care. And of course, it hasn't been a great advert, as it, for the social care system in recent weeks. There's some really tragic deaths were arguably, you know, young toddlers and babies that should have been in care and were not taken into care. But we're dealing very much, aren't we, Gemma, at that, you know, once you've left care, once the state stops being your parent. And that's why the thing about the bank and mum and dad, you know, we raise money for things like driving lessons. We raise money for, you know, those individuals that come to us being in care who have got a job interview but don't have a decent wardrobe or, you know, a suit to go for that interview. So it's very small, modest things, but often the things that can just make all the difference.
And I think it's there, you know, there is that local authority support. When it comes to leaving foster care, each local authority will have a different care leaver offer. Some offering more than others. I can speak for Brighton and Hove more specifically. They have a very good care leaver offer in place for young people. However, again, still within that, there is things that they fall short on. You know, like Tom's just said, we try and give people grants to go and fund, you know, a nice attire to take to wear to a job interview, because we don't want you turning up to a job interview not appropriately dressed to be what comes in between you achieving your dreams. So yeah, I think it's
as you said, you know, you came into a loving environment that set you up, but you know, I can only imagine that a lot of youngsters come out of the other side of the care system at what is it, 18?
18 is leaving
and
care.
then if you haven't formed that bond, then there must be a terrible sense of suddenly being out in the cold. Almost
Absolutely,
literally.
and they are just 1% of the adult population, but they're overrepresented. Street homeless, criminal justice system. That said, and Gemma's got a great philosophy on this. You know, we're very much about at Beyond turning adversity into advantage. You know, it's not a charity that focuses too much on those negatives or on the sort of victimhood status. We're not really interested in that, are we, Gemma? It is about trying to actually say to these young people, you've got incredible power, incredible resilience. These are life skills you've picked up, albeit, you know, through a rather traumatic situation in some cases. But that can be turned to an advantage. You know,
Definitely,
really
and I'm very much one to preach about, you know, you grow through what you go through, and you can very easily turn an adversity into an advantage as long as you've got the right mindset and drive to do it and to make it happen. And that's why, you know, it is hard to see, because we don't see the good stories in the media. We always see the negative. We don't see, you know, young person makes it out of care unless, you know, that local authority wants to blast it all over the billboards when it does happen. But we don't hear about those good stories, and they are happening on a daily basis. So it is important to raise awareness to that.
Now, obviously, this particular trust is just one Is it a model, though,
Yeah,
that
it is a model.
should be taken on elsewhere?
Absolutely. I mean, we've been focused very much with the 3 local authorities in Sussex. We've been focused on care leavers. Obviously, it helps as a trust because a care leaver has a very legal definition, so we're clear who the beneficiaries are. So what I'd say to those that are watching this that are interested, we need volunteers to get involved. We're particularly interested in those who are care experienced. We're a care experience-led trust. But also, please donate as well. Go to beyondtrust.org.uk. That small, our average grant is about £450. Could make all the difference at Christmas, but also the rest of the year as well. But also we want local authorities, there are over 140 of them in the UK, to engage in this model with us, and that's our plans for 2022 to roll out.
It's a very positive story that you're describing around this charitable trust, but clearly it also points to something that's not there in the care system. That once again, that vital, that necessary, that deserved help, is having to be found elsewhere.
It is, but that's where we hope to eventually, as we continue, to lay out beyond. We hope that is where we can then work together with local authorities to try and put these things in place. I more specifically do a lot of work with Brighton and Hove City Council, and they are very much now taking a movement in the direction of involving young people on panels for interviews, because I think often or not, within certain situations, whether it's children in care, or like Jay's just come on and spoke about homeless people, we often find that people in positions are talking about situations that they have no experience of. And that is why it is so crucial to get those who are experts by experience on board of these panels to make those changes that are going to be longer lasting and more impactful.
And what are your own specific ambitions? What is it that you're doing just now?
In terms of
your life plan at the moment.
So I'm currently at Greenwich University studying law with high ambitions to go on and become a barrister / probably entrepreneur at some point in my life. I don't believe you can stay in one career in this lifetime, but so very high ambition.
I don't know, you strike me as having that personality.
Drive and determination, absolutely.
Yes.
You come across as someone I can see in that role that you just described for yourself, and that, that's it's so encouraging when you talk about a grant of £450, which in the scheme of things is not a lot of money.
Yeah,
but it's details like that that make the difference.
It makes all the difference, and literally what you just said, the whole reason I am going into a career in the law is because I have seen firsthand, and I've said it multiple times, that I've seen firsthand the advantages of having a good advocate, and I've suffered the disadvantages of having a bad one. And if I can be that person and fill that gap for, whether that's, someone who, needs representation or whatever it may be, then that's what I want to do.
That's quite something to hear. You're 19, and the kind of experience that you've already got under your belt, the kind of life lessons you've already acquired.
Yeah.
The contribution that you would obviously be able to make, what you would be able to give back, it comes off of you like electricity.
Yeah.
Which is why we need across all the local authority areas someone like Gemma to step forward with the charity and help us set up a management committee locally so we can raise funds from local business and then set up that banker mum and dad for care leavers. That's my vision and Gem's vision too.
I can't do it on my own. I need young people, who have been in care, who have the passion that I do for making longer lasting change to get on board with us. Because I do see the charity going very far, and it's going to make a lot of longer lasting, impactful changes.
Gemma, I have no doubt that you will make the changes of which you speak. And if you don't, we'll all want to know the reason.
You can hold me accountable.
Thank you for that. Yeah. After the break, we're looking ahead to what? To Christmas, of course. And we'll have a very special guest in the studio, so stay with us.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. Now, as promised, tried to get to some social media, some of your feedback, because your opinions out there are welcome in here. And this is a random selection that's been offered up to me by those you can't see. Matthew via Twitter says, if Shropshire was the political knife thrust into Boris Johnson, then Neil Oliver's monologue tonight was the inevitable twist terminal. That's Matthew's words, not my own. Andy via GB Views says, we enjoy watching your show, great start, and so many truths spoken. We didn't get scared at the start of COVID, and we won't start now. I'm very pleased to hear it. Neil, another Neil via GB Views says, tell Neely, Mr. Blinder, the three wise men delivered gold, frankincense and scare. But Dee disagrees with me and says on GB Views, what a load of self-indulgent tosh. The news headlines just said the Netherlands were locking down, but no, only your hated Tories are at fault. Well, we'll leave that there, Dee. Thank you very much, and a Merry Christmas to you and yours. Word reaches me now of a very special guest. I am genuinely excited and thrilled. In fact, at this time of year, there's hardly a guest more special. If my information is correct, the guest in question has not only completed his list, he's already checked it not once but twice, and is now in a position to identify who among us has been naughty and who has been nice. Joining me for the last few moments of the show is none other than Professor Chris Whitty. Hey. No, it's not. No, thank God, I'm only joking. It's Santa Claus, or as Santa, I've just learned, prefers to be called Father Christmas. Santa is here. May I shake the hand of Santa? I can honestly say, and I don't know if this makes me insane or not, I never stopped believing in
Why
Santa
would you
Claus.
stop?
Santa Claus has always been part of my life. I think about Santa often, and I'm only too delighted to have you here. Now tell me, it's a week to go. How are things getting along?
They're going very well. The elves are working flat out. They're doing really well. They're doing so well that I've been able to come out this evening to meet you and to thank you for the good work you've done and to bring you a small gift. I nearly called you patron saint of lighthouses, but patron of the lighthouses.
Oh, look, Santa and the lighthouse. Now, people who are aware of me at all will know that I'm a passionate supporter of lighthouses. I've visited as many as I possibly can. So well, of course, Santa, you deliver the perfect gift.
Well, of course.
Perfect. As if you've been reading my mind. I look forward to reading that. Now, tell me some of the specifics. Where have you come from tonight?
From the North Pole. Obviously, I haven't flown in to London. I flew to a little aerodrome outside and was brought in a car.
A little private location, known only to you?
No. It's quite well known. It's a place called White Waltham. It's a little aerodrome, not like Heathrow or something. It's not international.
And what happens to the reindeer while you're here?
They're all resting up, ready for the flight back. I only needed a couple tonight because we're not carrying the 843 million households worth of presents.
What does that look like?
What does
143 million?
It doesn't look too much because it packs down, but when it expands out again, it's enormous. So can you imagine? You have millions of elves producing it all. It's a lot of work.
Is it something of the quality of the TARDIS? Are we dealing with a sack that somehow makes that which is great become temporarily small?
It's something I don't understand the science. You'd have to talk to the elf scientists, but that's the kind of thing. I think the TARDIS is a tribute, if you like, to my sack, yes.
Now, you two, come on. There must be, I mean, how many times does a person get the opportunity to cross-examine Father Christmas?
I have a question. Are there specific things that you feel are being left out for you and your reindeer too often and you're bored of and you would like something different? Like, have we had too much brandy, too many carrots, that sort of thing?
Mother Christmas does say I'm not to drink alcohol. There was an incident where several 100,000 houses left me brandy and sherry. So milk or water is probably safer. I love mince pies, I love cookies, or biscuits, as you say over here, don't you? And but the thing can I ask the viewers and you, if you're putting out a carrot for the reindeer, can you cut it up into 8 pieces and then they won't squabble over whose turn it is to have a bit?
Right, okay.
Oh, they would drive you mad, they really would.
Yeah.
Are any of them particularly greedy? Is it Blitzen that's naughty or...?
None of them are naughty, but yes, a couple of them are quite greedy.
And have you been stuck down any chimneys?
That's a calumny. That is... Oh.
This doesn't, Tom, come on, this doesn't happen, does it?
It doesn't happen.
No. Okay.
Actually, to be fair, though, now that I'm getting on in years, I do quite often, even at houses that have got a chimney, ask the grown-ups, do you think I might use the magic key rather than having to come down the chimney?
Well, I've got to say, Neil, I'm so starstruck sitting next to Santa. I hardly know what question to ask, but for some reason, because obviously we've been talking a lot about COVID and these restrictions, I'm just wondering, when you do set up in the skies with your 8 reindeers, do they each have to fill out the passenger locator form before you're allowed to fly into British airspace? Do you have to take a PCR test on day 2 if you're still around doing your deliveries? Is there any of that sort of COVID red tape that's bothering you?
Surely Christmas magic takes care of
it. Well, exactly, yeah.
Well, can we have some of that, please?
This makes me so happy because one time I saw my dad drunkenly stumbling in with a Santa hat on and I thought, damn, that's busted. But now I know. He was just an imposter.
There are lots of tribute acts.
Yes.
Yeah.
Santa, I should say, before we came on air, Maddie confessed that this year of all years, she was not feeling Christmassy.
I hope you are now.
She said to me, and I quote, in her heart it was still July.
I did see the jumper.
Without the warm weather and jumper.
Can you deliver up words? Can you deliver up words of wisdom based on your many centuries of experience? This year of all years, how should a person not feeling Christmassy reinvigorate their Christmas spirit?
Yep. If you're not feeling the Christmas spirit yourself, think of something you can do that's kind and nice for someone else, and that will fill you with Christmas spirit if you do it. I mean, I think from what you were saying before, that's really the way to go. Christmas isn't getting. It's giving and being a decent person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Santa, I do have a question that's bothered me for a considerable amount of time. For the other 364 days of the year, do you get time off or do you immediately start on preparations for Christmas again?
We have a short break and then it's back to prep, looking at what's going to be big toys next year that we need to be thinking about. And at the moment we're delivering to 843 million houses, and every year there are new houses, and we've got elves that specialise in logistics and they're trying to work out the routes. I mean, this is where the carrot came from, the carrot and my food. They came up with the idea of, instead of having to go back to the pole to get food for the reindeer through the night, get the best people, the kindest people, to leave a bit of something for the reindeer to eat. And I said, that's a good idea, and we could add mince pies, biscuits, and then I don't have to go back either.
And can I also ask, the questions are coming at me thick and fast now when I think about it. You've never been tempted, with all your talk of mince pies and the rest, you don't contemplate the keto diet?
No.
With a view to, extending your health and well-being into the distant future, no?
No.
Very healthy to me.
You're not interested in the low-carb, high-fat alternative?
No. I mean,
we're not leaving protein bars out for Santa.
No.
Mince pies it is.
If I could confess, as the guys are down at the aerodrome, one of my favourites is venison. That's really low fat. It's very good meat.
I can't believe you said that.
I'm sorry, but it's true.
Sustainably
I
short.
You said that. Is there any part of a reindeer
Santa
you can't
cannibalism.
eat? I'm thinking specifically of
Antlers. Antlers, very hard to digest.
What about?
I'm sorry, I hope that's not awfully shocking. Well,
it's a revelation to me.
There's one thing we want to hear on GB News. It's the unalloyed truth. And if it's venison for you, then
I'm afraid it is.
Then so it shall be. Maddie, Tom, do you feel it?
I'm feeling it now.
The love?
Yeah,
Feeling the
100%.
Christmas?
100%.
Oh, yes.
Is it stopping being a
Also
sad
quite
little
hungry.
Christmas?
I've wanted crackling before, and now I want venison.
Maddie actually saw you arrive, and I have to say, her little face, positively.
Oh, it was. She was so excited. She was. She was jumping up and down.
It's very exciting. It doesn't happen every day.
No, but I hope it's stopped you having a sad little Christmas.
Oh,
I hope
yes,
it's
I shan't have a
lifted
sad
it a bit. But just do something kind, and it'll be a fabulous Christmas.
What a great idea.
Yeah.
Absolutely splendid. Well, here we are, everyone. I can't believe we've reached this point. We're at the end of my last show of 2021, but not my last show. Neil Oliver Live will be back in the new year, and like many others, me and mine will be looking forward to 2022 with all the optimism and all the good humour that we can muster. And I think good humour, actually, as much as optimism, might be the key. We started GB News all the way back in June, which, I'll be honest with you, seems like a very, very long time ago now. But I can't thank you all enough for your company so far. All that remains for me to do now is to thank my lovely guests for this evening, Maddie, Tom, and of course, the one, the only, Santa Claus. Presumably has one or two things to be getting on with this week. Here's to you, the GB News audience. Lots of love from me, and here is to the merriest of Christmases, and let us hope a properly happy new year. All that's left for me to say now is let me think now, where are we? Mark Dolan Live coming up. Bye for now.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking rather cloudy again for many, although there will be some sunshine in the north and west. Let's now take a look at the details. Southwestern England will get off to a rather cloudy start, moving east towards southeast England and East Anglia, and it'll be a grey and murky start here with some mist and fog in places. East Wales and the Midlands will also be rather grey and murky, but out towards the west of Wales, it'll be a sunny but cold and frosty start to the day. There'll be some mist, fog and low cloud around the northwest during the morning, but towards Cumbria and the Pennines, it'll be a crisp start with plenty of sunshine. Northeastern England will also get off to a largely sunny start. Moving into Scotland, and there'll be some mist and low cloud around the central belt and eastern coast, but elsewhere should see some sunshine. But it'll be a cold and frosty start here. We move back into the cloud and murkiness across Northern Ireland. However, there will be a few breaks in the cloud in places, especially towards the north of the country. Heading towards lunchtime, and we'll see very little change, and if you stay under the cloud, it will feel rather cold. And that is how the weather's shaping up during tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.